freeze and do whatever, eh? So now I'm coming in out of the deep freeze.
Tonight, a group of land protectors who have been living in substandard housing for over 3 decades are getting new homes.
Everyone's basically laid off. So, yeah, I'm back to what I was when I started the company.
And Alaska cruise ships mean big business for the Yukon. But with the pandemic, tourism operators don't know if they can survive. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Northern Ontario, where Thunder Bay police officers will be facing disciplinary proceedings after an adjudicator found their investigation into the death of an Indigenous man as deficient. 3 Thunder Bay police officers investigated the death of Stacey DeBungy. His body was found in the McIntyre River in 2015. Within a few hours, Thunder Bay police issued a media release to say his death was not believed to be suspicious. The next day, police said the death was non-criminal before an autopsy was conducted. That case led to a review of the Thunder Bay Police Service, which found systemic racism within the force. Well, misconduct accusations and counter-accusations are swirling at the Assembly of First Nations. Executive-level turmoil is spilling into the public view. Brett Forrester joins us from Ottawa to explain. Brett, thanks for being with us. We understand the AFN is looking into harassment allegations against Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald. What are those allegations?
Yeah, Dennis, we learned earlier today that the Assembly of First Nation is going to proceed with what it calls a full investigation into harassment claims that several members of AFN staff have leveled against Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald. She put out a statement last night saying she became aware of those allegations on February 5th when National Chief Perry Bellegarde contacted her along with a legal counsel who prepared a preliminary report or a preliminary investigation into those allegations.
Now, Archibald's also making some allegations of her own. What can you tell us about those?
Well, as I said, Archibald said she became aware of the allegations against her on February 5th. Which was a day after the Chiefs of Ontario passed a confidential motion saying it has reason to believe the AFN Executive Committee has breached its code of conduct and code of ethics. And the contents of that resolution essentially call for an independent financial management expert to review policies and procedures for awarding contracts, among other things. And in her statement, Archibald says or claims that she has documents that show financial improprieties within the AFN. Of course, both the allegations against Archibald have not been substantiated, and nor have Archibald's claims of improprieties within the AFN.
How will this, as we know, there's an election coming this summer for National Chief. Bellegarde's not running. How do you see this impacting the race to select a new National Chief?
Well, that's interesting, Dennis. I think that's an important question, and of course, this is coming in the next few months, and this may cool off once the election approaches, because of course, as you mentioned, Bellegarde is not running, and we have not heard word that Roseanne Archibald is running either. However, there are some rumblings among the grassroots that many people would like to see a woman as the next National Chief. However, we're continuing to watch and see who is going to run, but ultimately there's going to be a turnover of staff at the AFN whenever a new National Chief does assume office. However, that doesn't mean these calls for reform or these calls for independent reviews or change within the AFN are going to go away anytime soon.
No, it's going to be an interesting couple of months. Great reporting, Brett. Appreciate you speaking with us about it.
Thanks, Dennis.
And you can find more on that story on the AFN by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. To Edmonton now, where an 11-member jury is now deciding the fate of Bradley Barton. after 2 jurors have been excused. Barton is facing a manslaughter charge in the death of Cindy Gladue. Gladue's body was found by Bradley Barton in the morning after he paid for sex in 2011. Barton was originally tried for murder but was acquitted. To Ottawa, where on Thursday the Government of Canada tabled Bill C-22. It's supposed to help address the over-representation of Indigenous people in prisons. Among other things, it wants to eliminate minimum sentencing for some crimes. But skeptics say the bill falls short on addressing systemic racism in the justice system. Jamie Pashagumskum reports.
It simply did not work.
Is what Justice Minister David Lametti said about what he called failed conservative justice policy and mandatory minimum penalties.
It was an approach that did not make our communities safer. It did not deter criminals. It did not make the justice system more effective or more fair. Its singular accomplishment has been to incarcerate too many Indigenous people, too many Black people, and too many marginalized Canadians.
Lametti's announcement called for ending some mandatory minimum penalties, but not all. Justin Trudeau says minimum sentences are useful in some cases.
I think Canadians can understand that on crimes like first-degree murder, it's important to have mandatory minimums and minimum sentencing. That is simply understood.
Senator Kim Pate disagrees, especially when it comes to abused Indigenous women, who make up 44% of women in federal custody.
The way a woman is killed is by choking or punching or that sort of thing. If a woman defends herself, she often has to grab something, whether it's a knife or a pen or something that is used as a weapon. And so we essentially tell women, you're responsible for protecting yourself and or your children. And then when they act to defend themselves, we swoop in and criminalize and imprison them.
Pate calls the new bill a good first step, but says it falls short in addressing the real systemic problems. She suggests a guaranteed livable income to keep women out of bad situations in the first place. In an email to APTN, Lametti's office says Bill C-22 is turning the page on failed policies by the Harper Conservatives. It goes on to say that this package didn't come out of thin air. It relied on evidence on what works while keeping Canadians safe. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Time to step aside for our first break here. Still to come, nearly 30 years later, we speak with those who have never left Ipperwash. Stick around.
We're still working with the Department of National Defense on long-term housing.
Welcome back. Ipperwash in southern Ontario is well known for the death of Dudley George. What is not as well known is that a small group of land protectors have continued to live there, where they've been living in substandard housing for almost 30 years. But as Annette Francis reports, that changed with the arrival of new interim homes.
After a few delays, these 2 trailers finally rolled into the Kettle and Stony Point First Nation. For the land protectors living in these army barracks, it's been a long fight. It's a day Pierre George thought would never happen.
It's just quite a thing, put it that way. I've lasted all these years here just living, freezing, doing whatever, eh? So now I'm coming in out of the deep freeze.
George is prepared to move into his new home.
Yeah.
He came to do one last walkthrough of his old place.
They just put me in a motel because I was freezing here.
He left about 3 months ago
really
because he had no heat.
Yeah, it was all right, summertime. It was great. But as you can see, everything's... The roof probably had fallen in, but they put a new roof on it.
According to Chief Jason Henry, there are more plans for the near future.
We're still working with the Department of National Defense on long-term housing, streets, infrastructure, bricks and mortar, permanent homes and a community for us to come back to. What happens today is the first 2 of 20 units roll on to Stony Point here, and we begin to progress again. We begin to move forward. We've been sort of stuck in a rut, so to speak, for about 8 decades.
This unsurrendered land, called Camp Ipperwash, belongs to the Stony Point First Nation near the southern shores of Lake Huron. In 1942, it was claimed by the federal government through the War Measures Act and used as an army training camp. Chief Henry says there are 20 to 30 families still living in these barracks, some without heat and clean running tap water.
I don't think I have to explain what it would be like to live here, like what people have gone through, what the price they have paid to ensure that this land is preserved here for us. You can see the tarps on the roofs, the sheeting blowing off. You can see the asbestos-clad buildings.
In 1993, Pierre and about 50 other land protectors moved into these barracks, reclaiming what was taken. 2 years later, Pierre's brother Dudley was shot and killed by the Ontario Provincial Police at Ipperwash Provincial Park nearby. In 2016, a final settlement agreement was reached with the federal government, but it'll take some time before the land is turned back over to the Chippewas of Kettle and Stony Point.
On paper and according to the law, this is a military installment still, and it will remain so until all the unexploded ordnance are removed.
Chief Henry says today's arrival of the 2 housing units is reason to celebrate.
Today is like the reverse of what happened 79 years ago. They took our homes, they put them on trucks, and they trucked them down the highway to Kettle Point, and that's where most of us were displaced to. Today, interim houses will come on trucks back onto the land, and it's one step towards reconciliation.
For George, it's like a dream.
Well, I have the grandsons right there. I go take them out in the bush and show them stuff. So they love it around here.
Once his trailer has been leveled and the hydro and water lines are connected, George says he should be moved into his new home in about a week. The remaining 18 houses are expected to be delivered by the end of March. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Kettle and Stony Point First Nation.
What a story. Well, we'd like to hear what you think about that or anything else you see here. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send us an email to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time for another quick break. Still to come, the impact of a cruise season shutdown.
I have done 3 tours since last March, and I average 3 to 10 tours a day.
Welcome back. Time now to take a look at our photo of the day. This was sent in by our viewer, Shelley Janvier, of her daughter, Nadia, playing the hand drum. Way to go, Nadia. This was taken this past summer with a pretty good camera. I know I'm looking forward to summer. Well, keep those photos coming by sending them to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Well, let's take a look and see what tomorrow's weather forecast is looking like. Starting on the east coast, -4 with flurries in St. John's, 2 below and snow in Halifax, -18 with snow for Kuujjuaq, 18 below with the sun out in Nain, -6 in Val-d'Or with snow, 10 below in Chibougamau, 3 below with snow for Sault Ste. Marie, -4 with flurries in Ottawa, -4 for Wawa, 8 below in Thunder Bay, -10 for Churchill, -8 in God's Lake and Norway House, 6 below for Winnipeg, -5 with snow for Barons River, sunny and 2 below in Saskatoon, +1 in Swift Current. Sunny and 0 in Buffalo Narrows, -1 in La Ronge. Over to northern Alberta, +2 with flurries in Fort McMurray, -4 for Fort Chip. +4 in Medicine Hat, 2 above in Edmonton. 7 with showers for Vancouver, +3 in Kamloops. -8 in Fort Nelson, +1 with snow in Prince George. -28 in Old Crow, 10 below with flurries for Whitehorse. Snow and -19 in Yellowknife. 24 below and snow for Norman Wells. -30 with flurries in Sax Harbor and in Paulatuck. -14 with snow for Baker Lake. Snow and 33 below in Cambridge Bay. -35 with snow in Resolute. 25 below in Igloolik. Some sad news now as a prominent First Nation Yukon MLA and elder has passed away. Darius Elias served for 10 years as MLA for the Wututwichin riding in Old Crow, the territory's northernmost community. Elias was the first Liberal to hold the seat in 2006. He later left the party and joined the Conservative Yukon Party in 2013. Elias went on to become Deputy Chief of the Wututwichin First Nation, where he retired from politics last year. Well, thanks to COVID travel restrictions, most cruise lines have postponed voyages to Alaska. Now, after almost a year of no cruise ship passengers in the Yukon, Indigenous tour operators are worried their businesses won't survive. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
So let's take a little drive.
At this time of year, Tina Dixon is usually busy transporting cruise passengers between Alaska and the Yukon. But COVID has devastated her business.
I have done 3 tours since last March, and I average 3 to 10 tours a day.
Dixon is Chippewan and the owner of Who, What, Where Tours in Whitehorse. Her business relies heavily on transporting Alaskan cruise ship passengers that dock in Skagway and travel into the Yukon.
Cruise ship numbers, they bring in larger groups, and when you pick up a group, 9-10 people at a hotel, that is amazing revenue for a day tour.
The Alaskan cruise ship industry is a major source of revenue in the Yukon, with 80,000 passengers visiting the territory each year. But due to COVID, only small cruise ships were allowed to dock last year, and passengers were not allowed to enter into Canada. To make matters worse, almost all Alaskan cruises scheduled for 2021 have been postponed until at least late this spring. Now, operators like Dixon have been forced to make massive cuts and are relying on grants to survive.
Yeah, everyone's basically laid off. So, yeah, I'm back to what I was when I started the company.
So our Carcross store didn't even open this year.
Bearpaw Gifts in Carcross has also been hit hard by cruise cancellations. Crystal Isaac is from the Okanagan Indian Band. Her mother owns 2 gift shops in Carcross and Whitehorse, which are heavily dependent on cruise ship tourists. While grants are helping the stores stay afloat for now, Isaac says if the ban on cruise ships continues, the Carcross location will likely close for good.
So not having that, and who knows when we will be having that again, is having a huge impact on even just like our future planning. Like, we don't know if we can even plan for the 2021 season.
This is the place the world needs to be. I think that, our land in Yukon is incredibly sacred.
Jeannie McLean is the Minister of Tourism and Culture. She says the government is working hard to help tourism operators prepare for reopening, like the recently released $15 million tourism relief and recovery plan that will be phased out over the next 3 years.
We have a partnership with Canada, with the Yukon University and Yukon government, along with a lot of partners, to support businesses to elevate and to look at, ways that they can pivot their business to do something different in Yukon.
Tourism's my life. That's what I do. I live and breathe it.
While Dixon has been able to somewhat pivot her business by shuttling locals, she doesn't want it to be permanent.
I worked way too hard to give this up that quick. So
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
It's certainly been a tough year on businesses, and it has been in long-term care facilities in Canada as well, with COVID-19 exposing serious issues within the system. Reporter Brittany Guillot joins us to talk about her APTN Investigates episode, The Elder Gap, Part 1. Brittany, thanks for being with us. How did this story come to be?
Yeah, so this story actually came to my attention when I was watching the daily COVID-19 press conference. They had announced that there was an outbreak at the Yukon Center. And so I had never heard of it before, but I knew instantly this was an Indigenous word, and so there was Indigenous people in this center. And from there, I started to do an online search to see what more I could learn about the place. And what I actually ended up learning was there was a story in the Winnipeg Free Press by a journalist, and it was written about 1.5 years ago about the tenants having all sorts of issues with security, unsafe conditions, and tenant deaths there as well.
What did you learn about long-term care in Canada?
Yeah, so with the pandemic, we've been hearing a lot, of course, about long-term care in general, but it got me thinking more specifically about Indigenous long-term care and what the options are for people and what the facilities are like and so on. And as it turns out, there are no national standards for long-term care. And for assisted living facilities like the Yukon Center, there aren't any provincial standards either. In fact, Manitoba is one of 6 provinces and territories that doesn't have provincial standards to regulate the care that seniors are receiving in these facilities. So assisted living facilities in Manitoba actually have to abide by the Residential Tenancy Act of Manitoba, just like any other apartment complex in the province. So there's nothing specific to assisted living in Manitoba.
Brittany, what are you hoping viewers take away from this story?
I'm hoping that this story can offer a bit of a deeper insight into some of the issues that long-term care facilities have been facing. Things like jurisdictional disputes, funding, staffing issues. These are things that have been brought to light with the COVID-19 pandemic, and it appears as though some of these issues have been bubbling to the surface for quite some time now. So I hope that this story can shed some light on that.
Well, Brittany, it looks good. Looking forward to seeing it. Appreciate you speaking with us about it.
Thanks for having me.
And the Elder Gap Part 1 on APTN Investigates is right after the APTN National News, which is just a few minutes away, as that is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for joining us. We don't typically do birthday shout-outs here, but we can make an exception when you're a living legend and the King of the North. Happy 76th birthday wishes tonight to Ernest Muñoz. We hope Ernest and all of you out there have a great weekend.